It's customary in their family to celebrate holidays together, but this time, everything took an unexpected turn. After lunch, the head of the household abruptly kicked his wife and daughter out, uttering, "Get lost before the guests arrive." Little Liza cried, and her mother, in despair, typed a message to her own mother while sitting in a cafe at the train station. Meanwhile, the husband, along with his relatives, was already uncorking champagne in her apartment, preparing to welcome visitors. Hello, dear listeners. I'm delighted to welcome you to my channel. I'm presenting a new, captivating story for you. Enjoy listening. The apartment on Chkalovskaya Street was inherited by Zoya from her grandmother. It was a modest two-room dwelling in a brick Khrushchev-era building, but it was hers. When she met Edik, he was renting a room in a dormitory for 12,000 rubles a month and dreamed of owning his own place as if it were a spaceship. Zoya was working at a kindergarten then, earning 32,000. She lived a simple life, but a peaceful one. Edik worked as a manager for a construction company. He promised career advancement and spoke of the future with such enthusiasm that she believed him. They had a quiet wedding, registered their marriage at the registry office, and celebrated with friends at a cafe. His mother, Nina Arkadyevna, came from Tver for a single day, gave them 2,000 rubles in an envelope, and sternly instructed, "Edik is my only son. Make sure he's well fed and content." Zoya nodded at the time, not attaching any significance to it. His mother left and life went on as usual. Edik moved in with her. They began to set up their household and planned for a child. 6 months later, Zoya became pregnant. Edik was happy but somehow reserved, as if waiting for something more. Liza was born in February, tiny with dark eyes and a loud cry. For the first week, Edik visited the maternity hospital every day, bringing fruit and kissing their daughter through the glass. But when Zoya returned home, something changed. He became irritable, spent his evenings on his phone, and responded to requests for help with, "I worked all day, let me rest." Zoya would rock Liza at night, do laundry, cook, and felt exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. Edik looked at her with disapproval, as if she wasn't coping. A month after the birth, he announced that he wanted his mother to visit. Zoya didn't object, thinking the help would be welcome. Nina Arkadyevna arrived with 2 enormous suitcases and took over the bedroom. She evicted Zoya and Edik to the living room. On the very first evening, she surveyed the apartment, tutting, "Edik, you're living in some sort of hovel. This place needs renovation." Edik nodded in agreement. Zoya remained silent. The apartment was hers, but she didn't want to argue. His mother stayed for a week, then 2, then a month. She took charge in the kitchen, rearranged things, and instructed Zoya on how to swaddle the baby, how to feed her, how to dress her. "Quote 4, she'd say, snatching Liza from Zoya's arms. Zoya gritted her teeth and endured. Edik remained silent. And if Zoya tried to object to his mother, he would hiss. Quote 5. Older. Nina Arkadyevna was 53 years old. She worked as an accountant in Tver and could easily have lived independently. But why would she if it was more convenient here? Liza turned 6 months old when Nina Arkadyevna had definitively settled in. She no longer spoke of returning to Tver. Quote 6. She explained. Zoya tried to object, but Edik sided with his mother. Quote 7. Nina Arkadyevna didn't work, stayed home, watched soap operas, and only cooked what Edik liked. Zoya took care of Liza. Then Edik's sister, Violetta, also moved into the apartment. She was 25. She was studying marketing remotely for some obscure specialization and lived in Tver with her boyfriend. But her boyfriend left her, and Violetta decided to take a break at her brother's. The break lasted 3 months. She slept until noon, spent her time on her phone, ate what Zoya cooked, and constantly complained about her life. "Zoechka, could you make some tea?" she'd whine. Quote 10. Zoya wanted to throw her out the door, but Edik said, quote 11. The utility bills kept climbing. Zoya paid for everything: electricity, water, internet. Edik provided money for groceries. It was barely enough for a week, and his mother and Violetta ate as if war was imminent. One day, Zoya calculated that for the three of them, food alone cost over 15,000 rubles a month, plus utilities at 8,000. Her salary went towards the apartment. Edik spent his on himself and all of them. Zoya tried to talk to him, but he brushed her off. _12. Zoya no longer felt like it was her home. She woke up before everyone else, put Liza to bed, rushed to work, then came back, cooked dinner, and washed dishes. Nina Arkadyevna, during this time, would sit on the sofa and comment, 13, Edik would nod, 14. Zoya remained silent, but inside, everything was boiling. By the beginning of autumn, her patience had run out. Zoya came home from work and saw Liza screaming in her crib. Nina Arkadyevna and Violetta were in the kitchen, drinking coffee and laughing at videos on their phones. 15, Zoya asked, barely holding back her anger. Her mother-in-law shrugged, 16. Violetta giggled. Zoya picked up Liza, went into the bedroom, and burst into tears. Edik came home that evening. She tried to explain, but he waved her away. 17. In mid-October, Edik announced that his mother's birthday was on the 16th. "We'll have a celebration here," he said. "We'll invite friends, relatives. We need to mark it well." Zoya was stunned. "Edik, we have a 2-bedroom apartment. Where will we put the guests?" He spoke as if it were his home, his celebration, his decision. Nina Arkadyevna approved the menu: salads, a hot dish, cake. Violetta chimed in. And champagne, of course, good quality, not cheap. Zoya asked who would be cooking. Her mother-in-law looked at her, surprised. "Well, you, of course, who else?" Edik added. "You'll manage. You're the hostess." Zoya remained silent, but something inside her broke. She realized her opinion didn't matter. They were dictating terms in her apartment, with her money, her time, as if it were their own. On October 14th, Zoya began preparations. She bought groceries for 8,000 rubles from her salary. Edik gave her 3,000 and said, 24. She spent 2 days cooking, chopping salads, roasting meat, baking pies. Liza was fussy the whole time. Zoya rocked her with one hand while chopping vegetables with the other. Nina Arkadyevna sat in the living room, watched television, and occasionally peered in. 25. Violetta was painting her nails in the bathroom. Guests were due to arrive at 6 o'clock in the evening on October 16th. At 2 in the afternoon, Edik walked into the kitchen where Zoya was finishing the last dishes and said, "Listen, Mom and I were discussing it. It would be best for you and Liza to leave for a while." Zoya froze. "What?" "Well, you understand, guests will be coming. It will be noisy. Liza will cry and disturb everyone. And you must be tired. Go for a walk. Sit in a cafe. Come back in the evening when everything is over." Zoya didn't immediately grasp what he was saying. Nina Arkadyevna came out of the living room and stood next to her son. 29. Violetta chimed in, 30. They spoke so casually, as if they were shooing a cat out onto the street. Zoya looked at Edik. He stood with his arms crossed, waiting for her to agree. 31, he said. There was no anger in his voice, only irritation, as if she were in the way. Zoya picked up Liza, threw on her jacket, and left. She walked down the street uncomprehending. In her head, the words echoed, 32. She reached the train station, entered a cafe, and sat by the window. Liza was crying, and Zoya rocked her, barely holding back her own tears. She took out her phone and dialed her mother. 33. Her mother replied a minute later, 34. She didn't explain anything further. At 6 in the evening, Edik, Nina Arkadyevna, and Violetta were setting the table. The guests hadn't arrived yet, but the champagne was already out. Salads were arranged on plates. Nina Arkadyevna surveyed the apartment and nodded with satisfaction. 35. Edik smirked. 36. Violetta opened a bottle. Quote 37. At that moment there was a knock at the door. Authoritative, demanding. Edik went to open it, thinking it was the first guests. At the threshold stood Zoya's mother, Lyudmila Fyodorovna, a tall woman with a stern gaze. Beside her were two local police officers. "Good evening," she said coldly. "I am the owner of this apartment. A week ago, my daughter gave me a power of attorney and asked me to re-register the apartment back to me. The gift deed has been revoked. I request that you vacate the premises." Edik turned ashen. "What do you mean, revoked? What nonsense?" "No nonsense," Lyudmila Fyodorovna replied. "Zoya told me about your behavior a week ago. My lawyer and I have completed all the legal procedures. I gifted the apartment to her before the marriage. A gift deed can be revoked by mutual consent. Zoya agrees. The registration at Rose Riester was finalized yesterday. The apartment is now mine, and you are here illegally." One of the police officers nodded. "I confirm. We have been provided with an extract from the Unified State Register of Real Estate. The owner is Lyudmila Fyodorovna Rizhova. Citizen, are you registered here?" Edik shook his head. "No." "Then pack your belongings. You have 2 hours." Nina Arkadyevna went into the hallway, saw the police officers, and turned pale. "Edik, what's happening?" "We're being kicked out." "Mom!" Violetta shrieked. "Kicked out! We live here." "Illegally," Lyudmila Fyodorovna cut in. "Zoya is my daughter, and I will not allow her to be humiliated in her own home. Pack your bags. Everything Zoya bought stays here. You take your belongings." For 2 hours they packed in deathly silence. Nina Arkadyevna lamented. Violetta sobbed. Edik remained silent, clenching his teeth. Guests began to arrive at 6. Lyudmila Fyodorovna met them. "The celebration is canceled. The owner of the apartment is evicting the tenants." The guests left, bewildered. By 8 in the evening, Edik, his mother, and his sister stood on the landing with their bags. The police officers checked, locked the door, and left. Zoya returned at 9 o'clock. Her mother met her at the door. Zoya entered the apartment and looked around. Untouched salads, champagne, and cake stood on the table. She walked over, took a bottle, and threw it into the trash bin. Liza slept in her arms. Zoya said quietly. Lyudmila Fyodorovna nodded. Quote 5-5. Zoya nodded. For the first time in 6 months, she felt she could breathe freely. Edik called for 3 consecutive days, yelling, demanding to be let in. Zoya changed the locks and didn't answer. He came, banged on the door, and shouted, "Are you crazy? This is my family." The neighbors called the police, and he was taken away. A week later, Zoya filed for divorce and alimony. Edik tried to prove his claim to the apartment, but the lawyer explained that it was gifted to Zoya before the marriage and was not jointly acquired property. He received nothing. Alimony was set at 7,000 rubles a month. He paid sporadically. Nina Arkadyevna returned to Tver. Violetta moved in with a friend. Edik rented a room in a dormitory for 14,000 rubles, more expensive than before. He sent Zoya angry messages. "You destroyed our family. Liza will grow up without a father." Zoya blocked his number. 6 months later, Zoya renovated the apartment, painted the walls, bought a new sofa, hung curtains she had chosen herself. Liza learned to walk and ran around the apartment, laughing. One evening, there was a knock at the door. Zoya opened it. Edik stood at the threshold. He had lost weight, looked gaunt, and held a bag of children's clothes. Quote 58, he asked quietly. Quote 59, Zoya looked at him for a long moment. Quote 60, she said, and closed the door. He stood there for a while, then left and never came back. One winter evening, Zoya was walking home with Liza from kindergarten. Snow crunched underfoot. Their daughter was babbling about something. A warm little hand lay trustingly in hers. Edik stood by the metro, smoking in a worn jacket, looking tired. He saw them and stepped towards them. Quote 61. She didn't stop. Liza tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, who is that?" "No one, sweetheart. Let's go," she said. They walked past. Edik watched them go, but didn't call out again. At home, Zoya put Liza to sleep, sat on the sofa, wrapped herself in a blanket, and thought about how easily one can give away their life, their home, themselves, and how difficult it is to get it back. She remembered Edik saying, "Get lost before the guests arrive." And she smiled. It was good that she left then, but even better that she returned.